Hello and welcome to Sophie Stained Glass. It is the week of the beast from the east, so I apologise for looking a bit like a womble, but you have to do what you have to do to keep warm. My top tip for your very cold studios is rucksack on the back with a hot water bottle in. Happy to help. So I'm going to do a complete beginner video today because, shock horror, I have just learned from extensive research, that's to say 60 seconds on YouTube, there aren't any videos for making tiny little simple first project leaded glass ornaments. Many copper foil ornaments, but none in leaded glass. Now, leaded glass may not be best designed for ornaments, but it's somewhere to start. So that's what I thought we'd do. So you want to think about something with only straight lines as your first project. Much easier, by about 1 billion miles, much easier. So here's some ideas. I'm going to be making this one today. These three are all the same shape, so should be easy enough. Then I thought after this series on making that very simple design, I could do another series on a slightly more ambitious project that's an A4, so it can go into an A4 frame when you've finished it. But we'll start with a very simple one, and yes, I hope this is useful for you beginners out there. And there's lots more videos on my website, but you'll probably see that they're much more in-depth. But you will find some in-depth cutting videos, which you can refer to if you need to work on those skills. Okay, let's get on. So first of all, what do you need in terms of tools? A ruler. It doesn't have to have this anti-slip on the back, but it makes it a little bit easier. This ruler I made by sticking some of this anti-slip stuff you get from Wilkinson's on the back. And that's a couple of pounds probably. You need a glass cutter. A good glass cutter will really help. Even professionals can't cut glass well with a cheap cutter. This one's about 20 quid, so not a massive expense. You can get these for about £2 and they're probably good for a few goes. So maybe you could give it a try, but you might find that you cut so badly it puts you off, and that would be a shame. Some desirables but not essentials. Grozers, they can help snap your glass. Lead cutters, they can really help, but if you don't want to buy a lead cutter, you can use a Stanley knife just while you're experimenting, seeing if you want to do this. You need a hammer, but obviously any hammer will do. You need some horseshoe nails are nice, but you can get away with ordinary nails when you're just trying it all out. And of course some glass. Now I'm going to, as I said earlier, I'm going to do this design here, and all three of these shapes are the same shape. And it's small, so you're not going to be wasting or using much glass. I'm actually going to cut 4 because I'm not sure which colours I'm going to prefer. I'm actually going to use one of the edges that is already cut. Now you might find it easier to draw over your design, and that way you can move the glass willy-nilly while you're trying to get your glass cut. So if that's what you want to do, you can do that. Otherwise, if you're confident, you can just put it on the design and cut away. So there it is. As I mentioned, there is a tutorial on, well, there's a few tutorials on cutting glass on my website. So I'm not going to spend too long now. I'm just going to say refer to that to get your skills up to sort of passable level. You put your ruler in place a little bit away from the inside of the line, because your grinding wheel that scores your glass is in the middle, so you've got to account for this edge here. So score, firm, even pressure, and snap. Now the reason we've got this line that we're cutting the inside of is because actually this is where grozers come in handy. You can, if you're really strong, snap that, but I'm not very strong, so I always use grozers. And you want the flat side at the top, and you just snap like that. Now this one. Where you've got bigger glass to hold on to, it's easier to snap. So there's my first one. Let's see if it fits. There we are. Now we're going to do another one. I just checked they are really all the same. Yeah, they are. That's good. So when you're drawing a design, you need to use a pen or a drawing package with a 2mm line. And that is because in the middle of lead is a heart, which is 2mm. So your glass is never going to butt up against each other. It's going to be separated by a gap of 2mm. So when you draw your pattern, you have to have a 2mm nibbed pen, and that will give you the correct distance between each shape of glass that you cut. Now, next one. So this one, I am just going to cut it. I'm not going to draw onto my design. One less thing to do. Also, you will see that I am doing score lines in one go, and I will snap all together at the end. That's because I'm confident, and it's a simple shape. So you can see whether that's something you feel like doing or not. I should be sweeping in between. I don't know where I put my brush. Okay, but you get the idea. Sweep, sweep, because you don't want to... yes, here's something to point out to you. I can theoretically get this shape out of this side, but I won't be able to cut such a thin strip off. So actually I can't cut it from this piece. It's not like fabric where you can go right up to the edge. You need a bit of snapping space. So it's a bit more wasteful cutting glass than... Oh, look, there you go. I'm cutting without a ruler, and you can cut without a ruler if you're confident and you have a straight hand, which over this kind of distance is quite doable. So there we are. I will try this one now, see if I prefer that. Ooh, kind of fits. Like I say, feel free to use a ruler. At this stage of your making, it's probably much easier. So, what do I want? What do I want? Do you know what? I actually think I'm going to cut another piece of this, because it varies a lot within the actual piece, and I like the bit which has got a bit of clear in it. So that's what I'm going to do. So actually I'm going to cut all of these pieces. I'll use this so you can see. All of these from the same type of glass. I am being a bit naughty by not sweeping it away and just using my sleeve, but you get naughty after a while when you've been doing glass. Okay, so there we have it. Right, so that's how they're going to go together. I don't normally work on a piece of paper. I put that there so you can see the colour of the glass, but I'm going to remove it now because I think it's going to start to annoy me. Now if you're converting a space at home for this sort of project, you'd need a thing like a big chopping board, a big offcut of wood, and that can be your sort of portable workbench. Important bit of kit I forgot to mention. Soldering iron. Expensive, different to the sort of soldering iron you use for electrics. It's the tip is different. It's a thermostatically controlled tip. You don't want it too hot, you don't want it too cold, and if you buy the right sort of soldering iron, it will stay at the right temperature. You need a sponge, and that cleans off the tip. It's not a general household sponge, it's a magical sponge that you use on soldering irons, and you get them from the your stained glass supplier, either online, obviously these days, or in person, and you wet them. There we are. Get it everywhere. Right, now I am going to suggest that you use a 10mm lead, and that's because you're beginners and you want it to cover up your embarrassing mistakes. When you use lead, you have to stretch it before you use it. Now I know this lead has already been stretched because it comes from my offcuts, and possibly you'll be using someone's offcuts, but if not, to stretch the lead, get a friend to hold one end with a pair of pliers, you hold the other end with a pair of pliers, and you pull. And you pull till it goes a bit stiff. Now, how do we start leading? We are not using a jig today, which you'll see in my other videos, simply because you don't need to make one for something this small. I'm going to suggest you overshoot on this first one. So I'm just going to cut it nice and big, and then we're going to trim it at the end. So you slip your glass into your lead. Now, to keep it in place while you're working it, and this is why you're going to do it on a piece of board. Stops it wiggling about. Now then, the way this is going to go together is like this. Okay? And with a more complex design, actually what you would do is put this pattern underneath. Now I'm feeling guilty I didn't put the pattern underneath. I think I won't bother today because it's just another thing to line up, and you can see by eye. Let's not complicate things. So actually I cut this with a slope, so let's see if it works. Yes, that butts up nicely on this joint here. I'm just going to go and refocus. So that's very nice. And this is going to go in here, like that. So I hope you can see that the final piece is going to go here. So we have to cut this piece of lead that's going to be in a way that will allow that to happen. So I will use this to scratch onto my lead where I think the cut needs to be, and I'm going to do it here. And I hope that it will become apparent why I'm cutting it a bit short. And it's basically because the next piece will take up the right, I may have cut that too long, but we will see. Now this piece is going to go here. I didn't say you needed a fid, but a fid is nice. They're not expensive, so you may as well buy a little fid. It helps open up the lead. So that's going to go in there like that. And actually, although I can use a nail to mark this, I'm going to use my thumbnail. And I'm going to cut it there. You have to cut everything a bit short so that the glass can go inside. So there I am again, opening up my channels with my fid. Maybe you couldn't see that, not sure. So if you slide it through, it takes out any kinks. So there we go. Now, I hope you can see it all coming together. I'm going to put the nail in here. And the nail in here. Now, you want to make sure that these two corners are broadly lining up. So we've got our piece of lead in here. Now we need a piece of lead in here. And that's going to butt up like that. So, there we go. And again, you want to have the lead finishing a bit short because that little gap is taken up by the outside lead. You can't easily overlap outside lead. Not when you're using round like on this occasion. So that's like that, and that's like that. Now, one of the things I didn't do was pay much attention to which way round these pieces of glass were going, but I'm not too worried about that. I think they'll look nice anyway. I'm going to trim this, and I'm going to trim this, because the outside edge lead is going to do that job for me. It is a bit fiddly, I won't lie, it is a bit fiddly. And this one now. So, there we go. Now, that goes in there like that. Now we're going to do the outside lead. And what we want is to split the difference on these corners. So I'm just going to go up to there and mark it off. That's my first outside lead there. Now remove this nail. So that's what you have to do as you make. You take the nails out. No, I'm going to do that there. Just going to trim this one. I didn't get my angle as nice on this end, but I'm not going to worry because the solder will cover that up. Okay. cover a multitude of sins with your solder. This side. So that I can do the outside lead on this side. Now, mark it up with your nail again and cut. So I hope you can see where we're going with this. Now, I should have cut the corner off, tip off this one. So what we're going to do, because I didn't, is we're going to try opening up this end so that we can go over it, which isn't normally what we do. But I'm actually going to cut this a little different this angle. It's normally what we do, but we're going to give it a go, and if that doesn't work, we'll go to plan B. Yeah, that looks like it will do all right. Okay. So there we have our little ornament, all leaded up and ready to solder. Solder comes in lots of different, well not lots, 4, but more commonly 3 different mixes. Mix of tin and lead, and for this it doesn't really matter what you use. So you may as well go for the cheapest. Okay, so you have to put flux on your lead, otherwise the solder won't take, because as the surface heats up it oxidizes, which means it gets dirty. So you don't paint with a soldering iron, you lay it on, you leave it till you see the solder start to run and calmly remove. So let's watch. There. So you leave it on for longer than you think. Not massively longer, but don't be worried. You don't have to put it on and then do that, because what will happen is you'll get peaks. Now you see here there's a little gap there because we can't cut an inverted V very easily. I will cover that with the solder, and this is how you do that. You draw it towards where the gap is. If you find you aren't happy with the way you've covered your little gap, wait till your solder goes cold and then revisit it. And you'll find it's a little bit easier to control the second time round. Oops. Okay, so I've done this badly, but that's okay because it shows you how you can mess it up. But that's okay, I will cover it with the solder. Oh my god. There we go, covered up. That's alright, actually, because you're all going to melt through the lead at first, and that shows you that you can retrieve it. So there we go, we turn it over, flux each joint, and off we go again. See how my soldering iron is flat? It's not like that. See, I covered up that hole much better that time. Happens to the rest of us. Okay. Right, one more thing to do is to make a little hook. Wrap your bit of wire around a pencil, snip it off with some snippy snips. I mean, if you've got pliers, these will snip through, no problem. Like that. Probably going to move when I try and solder it anyway. Fiddly, really, really fiddly. It's best when somebody holds it in place with a pair of pliers. So I'm going to touch a bit of solder there. So there was a bit of solder on my soldering iron, and I then pushed the wire loop into place. Now I'm going to put another blob on top. So, I hope you will have enjoyed the first episode of Beginner's Guide to Tiny Little Leaded Glass Objects. This is good to go. When you're making windows, you need to cement it, and then you will want to polish it up. So I think what I'll do is I'll do a second episode in this series where I will show you on this tiny little object how to do that. Although it's robust and it's not keeping out the weather, so you don't really need to do that. I will give it a little bit of a scrub, and you'll see it takes the colour down. You might think it will take the colour up, but it does the opposite. It starts to give it that leaded glass look. So you can leave it bright, or you can scrub it. This is a coir brush. Some people use lead polish or grate black. You don't really need to. If you use a bit of elbow grease, you can take the colour down without it. But there you go. It's pretty nice, isn't it? And you could do any of these designs, and they would make good first projects. So come back for the second instalment of how to cement, and that will be a complete stained glass project for a beginner. Thank you, and please remember to like, comment and subscribe, and check out the other videos.